Steve Deace joining us from Michigan Podcast. Please join him there. Of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel as well, where we cover the entirety of college football. And even on Steve's show, I've listened to it many times. You get the hardcore Michigan talk on the personnel breakdowns, the big narrative surrounding the program, the Big Ten, and college football collectively. If Jim Harbaugh continues the progress that he's made in Ann Arbor and has the type of career as Michigan head coach that we all anticipate, 2016 will be somewhat of a step in the progress of building a championship program. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't, then you, Steve, have just outlined much better than I could, but I have in the past outlined why, man, it was just a lost season for the Wolverines, and why maybe Jerry DiNardo is listening right now, that this team was that close.
Yep.
To winning a national championship. And I don't care about the results, because I look at the performance on the field. The results are what counts toward winning a division, a championship, etc. That's what counts. But if you're assessing and evaluating teams, man, that team was that close.
Mark, they led the nation last year in scoring margin, victory margin, even over Alabama. Keep in mind, they played in a league that had, in the final college football playoff rankings, 4 of the top 7 teams were in that conference. And Michigan beat 2 of them, and probably should have beaten the 3rd in Ohio State, but gave that game away. Okay, so you're right. Last season was a lost season. I described it after it was over as a little bit like being really hungry and going to Dairy Queen. And at that moment, it tastes great and it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of chocolatey goodness there, but about an hour or so later, your body's like, those were empty calories, man. We need some solid food here. We need some meat and some potatoes. We need some, just to get some protein put back in that system. And I think that's what that season for Michigan was like. It was a lot of fun. There were a lot of name the score Saturdays. I love my favorite. I love off season conventional wisdom. We've talked about that before, and if your team wins a bowl game, they're always a young team with everybody coming back. When that's not true, but that's what every fan base says every year. So it's like the NFL only drafts guys off teams that lose bowl games. They never draft the good players off the teams that win bowl games, right? And the new recruits are always more athletic and faster than the guys that just left, and that's not really always true either. But the one thing about this past season for Michigan is it did feel like empty calories. And that Penn State game, and everybody's like, oh, well, they didn't have their linebackers. Dude, their linebackers aren't why that James Franklin was so afraid he was going to get shut out that he called a timeout on 4th and goal from the 1-man to kick a field goal because they thought they were going to get humiliated and he might get fired. Okay, so yeah, they missed their linebackers, but their linebackers had nothing to do with why Saquon Barkley had 5 more yards than you had that afternoon, Mark. That was a hell of a football team. And the reality is they did everything on the stat sheet a team with their talent profile should have done. At the end of the year, they looked the way they should have looked. Wilton Speight had the season, when they named him the starting quarterback, and people thought, all right, what kind of season does he need to have in order for Michigan to realize its potential? You would have said 15 to 20 touchdowns, under 10 interceptions, 65% completions. That's about exactly what he did. Okay? They looked exactly the way they should have looked. Don Brown had the exact impact he should have had. They just had a play here, a play there, and it'll be fascinating to see the way that maybe motivates this year's team coming back, because for all the talk of, they've only got 5, and this is something we talked about as well, they actually have 14 guys that started at least one game last year. They played 19 freshmen last year. So a lot of these guys, Eddie McDoom's not a returning starter, but he was maybe the best jet sweep player in America last season. These guys were on those teams that just didn't get it done at the very end. And so this is not just a bunch of guys who were scrubs in the scout team and they never played and they weren't a part of last year's team, so they don't really have that chip on their shoulder. That's not true. They were a part of every one of those disappointments.
And as you well know, Steve, some fans and media, and I'm not just talking about ones that don't think through the process, would not just point out a play here and a play there, but a call here or a call here, not just a call here or there, but we know what that one particular call meant toward the Big Ten championship and a college football playoff berth, most likely. obviously having to get through Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship game. When you talk Dairy Queen, you're talking my language, but I do have to have some substance before I go grab the large blizzard. There's no question about that. I love my junk food, but man, you got to have the meat and potatoes first and foremost.